derail, you can always turn it off.
Is the heart love? Is the heart love? Is the heart of? Is the heart
Rise, little death. Rise! There is a hole at the bottom of the lake where the movies come from. He always comes back. What?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is your host, Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations to the sexually confused. Yes, I'm doing pretty well, Mike. How the fuck are you doing?
Oh, I'm cracking up now at the description for the show, but other than that, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. What's up, Dawn? Always with us as well. How you doing?
Doing good. Always happy to be here.
All right. And then for this episode, we actually have a couple of guests with us, so they should be familiar. One is returning, so I'll introduce him first. It's JP from 22 Shots and Vinegar, or I was going to say Vinegar Syndrome podcast, Sin Bin podcast. What's up, JP? Welcome back.
Pretty much the Vinegar Syndrome podcast. So, I mean, yeah, we're not technically official, but we might as well be. What up, dude? I saw this movie and wanted to come talk to somebody because we're kind of on still hiatus on 22 Shots. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, cool. I was going to say it's like good timing because you guys are like just kind of coming back out of the summer break. So cool. All right. And then also from the same two shows, it's his first time here. I've had the chance to do some stuff with him on his shows or their shows, the two guests here. And that would be Tyler. What's up, Tyler?
What up, dog? Yeah, same thing, man. With JP, I think we're itching. Like now that we're coming back, we got like a little, we got our monthly taste of Simbin. We had a little show last week, and this is like one of those movies I also like just like have to talk about, but you just cannot text about this movie. Like this is like a conversation only movie.
Yeah, it's definitely one has a lot to unpack, regardless of like how much you liked it or disliked it. So I'm pretty interested to see where we all are. I mean, usually, I would say usually guests don't reach out to come onto the show if they hate it. So I can guess that you guys have more favorable, but I have no idea what Venom or Dawn.
That's not true.
It.
I reached out to come on the 2019 Black Christmas film because I hated it so much.
That's probably one of the most infamous episodes in the podcast history.
I know.
Damn it. I had mercifully forgotten that movie even existed. Thanks, JP.
Oh, sorry about that, Venom.
Yeah, I think that was one of the uncharacteristic times where a bunch of people are just like, yeah, I want to get on there just to rag on it. And then you had Christian as the ultimate defender.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right. Well, if you're still in a mystery about what movie we're talking about, it would be Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. And it's director and writer Jane. How do you pronounce it? Schoenbrun? Schoenbrun.
Yeah.
All right. Previously of I Saw the TV Glow and We're All Going to the World's Fair. So as you can imagine, this will probably divide audiences. I haven't really looked at like the masses out there to see the favorability versus not or any of the aggregates, but I've seen a few posts. Some people are just bewildered by it. Some people hate it. Some people love it. Some people in between. So we're going to find out what we all think. Let me see what it says on IMDb. So a director making a slasher sequel becomes obsessed with casting the original film's final girl, leading both women into psychological and sexual chaos. All right, It's all right. I mean, it doesn't really spoil too much there. So cool. So the way we do things on here, we'll start with our kind of general thoughts before we get into just full on spoilers and everything. So it's we always start with Venom. So Venom, what did you think of Camp Miasma?
Well, you can count me in the crowd that absolutely loves this film and all three of Jane's movies. These movies have so much to say. And for a straight white male, well, maybe not white, I am Hispanic, but for a straight Hispanic male, these movies still speak to me in a way that absolutely shocks me. Uh, I mean, let's talk about just the on the surface stuff first. I mean, this movie is shot beautifully. This cinematographer has an amazing eye for dreamlike scapes, and I absolutely appreciate that. I love the change in film quality throughout the movie where we're watching an 80s slasher with like film grain and even video defects, but then as soon as a certain event occurs, everything goes to beautiful 4K. Even the score changes, changing kind of the context of the scene. Incredibly well done. Our performances by our two main stars, of course, Gillian Anderson, always great to see her again, especially in genre fare. And then Hannah Einbinder as Chris. I mean, what an absolute tour de force I think we get from her. This third act, I mean, she pretty much runs the gambit of emotions in the third act of this film. Absolutely love this performance. And then our killer, Little Death. I when I first saw the mask on a movie poster, I'm gonna be honest, I thought it just looked so fucking stupid. But in action, this is actually one of my favorite new horror villain designs, probably since In a Violent Nature. Just really, really well done. And even the symbolism of everything, the mask, the plastic suit, the spear, all of it. There's nothing here nothing in this film is here by accident. Everything is very intentional, very purposeful, and I love that about Jane Schoenbrun's films. I also love how this movie kind of follows the same trajectory of the entire trilogy. Whereas you can kind of look at we're all going to the World's Fair as like, a story about dysphoria. And then I saw the TV glow being more like a recognition of what someone actually is, leading into Camp Miasma, which is the acceptance of who they actually are and the happiness that comes from being happy with, being accepting of your true self. So it's almost like the three acts of this movie follow the same trajectory of this trilogy as a whole. And I think that's brilliantly done. I think this is a filmmaker that has a lot to say. I am thoroughly looking forward to the rest of their career. I'm trying to use my proper pronouns, so if I use the wrong one, please don't kill me. I am an old man. I am Gen X. I am Gillian Anderson in this movie for all intents and purposes. So, but yeah, and then the under the surface stuff, of course. I mean, the metaphors, the symbolism, the search for sexual identity, the acceptance, the confusing sexual desire that's represented in the film in multiple places, the relationship between fear and arousal, and yes, that is a real thing, folks. The fear boner is a real thing. There's plenty of guys out there that'll tell you about that. And just this third act and kind of just the death of dysphoria and the symbolism of the mask, even the symbolism of the candy, like the candy in this movie has, metaphors behind it, at least from what I saw, kind of representing childhood, specifically Chris's childhood and how she would consume her movies, back in the VHS days with a bucket of popcorn and a bag of candy in front of her. There's so much to love about this movie, and my God, I will never listen to the Counting Crows the same again, because the long December scene in this film is potentially one of my favorite scenes of 2026. It is so well done. The transition from Little Death outside the cabin to then going into the cabin and performing their rampage, just absolutely stellar. there's very little I can really nitpick about this movie. I mean, yes, it is almost 2 hours, but you know what? It felt about an hour long to me because I was absolutely enthralled. I was invested. I cared about our characters. And I mean, even the symbolism of all the deaths in the third act. I mean, there is so much symbolism, so much iconography in this film that we could probably sit here and talk about just that, just the metaphors, just the underlying, undertones of this film for hours. But obviously, we have guests this week, so I'm going to go ahead and shut up and say this movie has vaulted into my top 5 of 2026. Not quite my number one, despite the fact that I have almost nothing to nitpick about. And I even got to see one of the Kids in the Hall, and I am a huge Kids in the Hall fan, so that makes me happy too. So yeah, I'm just gonna say, if you're a fan of metaphoric and more symbolic horror films, but you're still a fan of just those greasy, grimy 80s slashers, I think Camp Miasma is absolutely for you. So, I mean, it gets a hard recommend from me. So, like I said, for the sake of letting other people talk, I'm going to go ahead and shut up and say back to you, Mike.
All right. Well, that was a glowing endorsement of the movie. Cool.
A TV glow?
Yeah. All right. Well, next up, Don and Ellie, what did you think of Camp Miasma?
I thought this sucked ass. Yeah, this was not something I found myself interested in. I have, well, I've seen TV Glow because that's the. No, wait, it's World Fair. That was the one that was sold to me as a horror film, and that's the one I've seen. I haven't seen TV Glow because it's not a horror film, so I don't know much about her work. But I do know that her style is just not for me. I don't like a lot of this heavy, deep metaphor nonsense. Everything being, drawn out and just absolutely way too long. I don't like the pacing here. I don't like this, heavy, just drama based nonsense, this coming of age story. It's fine for what it is. I do like the setup. I do like the way it's presented. It's just similar to The Shining. It's fantastically technical work on stuff I'm just not interested in. And just that's just the way I come across with it. I'm not interested in it. And it just drags. The horror stuff is just way too scattered up in the third act. A lot of what's presented here is, again, you can go in deep and you can, find all these hidden markers about, coming of age, sexual identity, sexual exploration. I get all that, and I know where it's coming from, and I know what it's all about. Just as a viewer, I'm just not interested. That's just not something that I find myself gravitating to. It's fine if, that's something I stumble across. It's just not something that's ever going to resonate with me. I'm past that point in my life. I've already come to terms with it all. It's just not something that I find myself, gravitating to and finding a lot of enjoyment, entertainment, and just all that kind of stuff. It's just not something that's for me. And that's just kind of some of the other themes that I find, or I found in, World's Fair. It's just, I get where it's coming from. It's just not for me. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is just, it's good to look at. It's just not something that drags me in. And then a lot of what happens in here, I thought was done better in another film that has a very similar premise called The Red Mask. I don't know if that's available yet. I saw it on a, festival last year, so I think it should be out by now. I don't know if it is or not, but it pretty much does a lot of the same thing. It's a filmmaker that's given the license to remake a film in a popular franchise and attempting to put a new modernized woke spin on it, and things ensue from there. And I don't want to spoil too much just in case Red Mask is not available yet, but it does a lot of the same meta slasherness that this does, but it does it throughout the entire movie, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say on it. Just like I said, to keep Red Mask just kind of spoiler free at the moment. The slashing stuff is fine. I like that act of the film. It's familiar territory. It's something I can get invested in. A lot of what Venom was saying. The mask, the imposing nature. The way it moves, the way it looks on screen. I love that stuff. That's just fantastic. I love that section of the film. I'm just not sold on the first 2/3 to get there. And hey, I appreciate the fact that it tried something new. I'm never gonna fault it for trying something new. It's just what it tried is just not material or content that I'm all that interested in. So yeah, again, I could talk a little bit more, but I don't want to, hog the realm from the other guests. So at this point, I'll say back to you, Mike.
All right, so the scoreboard is 1-1. I guess
And I'm expecting to be one at the end of it.
since Tyler reached out first, I guess we'll go to him next. So Tyler, what are your general thoughts on Miasma?
All right, can't miasma. All right, so I've only seen World's Fair once, but I'm definitely interested in really trying to revisit the because I really didn't like it that much. I remember when I was watching, but I really couldn't tell you much about it. But however, for I Saw the TV Glow, for people who not know, it was my number one film period, 2024, and it's probably my favorite film period since at least 2019. And I
This
think this
my effort started crying on the show, bro.
I
You
have a
loved it that
hard I
much.
have a hard time talking about I Saw the TV Glow without getting emotional. And it has like nothing to do with like the very obvious like, more surface things on the film that everybody talks about. And it just but just the way that movie made me like look inward in my life and think about choices I made and like who I was growing up like it really messed me up for a couple of months. So I was obviously very excited to check this movie out. And I think I loved it. I think it follows a lot of the same tendencies that movie did, but it does it in a completely different way, and it examines, I think, different things. Um, to me, it's an identity movie. I think there's like a lot of influence in this from the word from like in TV. Well, also I think a lot of the aesthetic from this it feels like it comes from a lot of it feels like it's inspired from like the Lynchian worlds. That's the worlds I get with her. Like I believe like the miasma itself in this doesn't feel like it's actually reality. Like I don't think this is a movie about a filmmaker named Hannah going to an actual place. I don't think like any of this is supposed to be in reality, and it's supposed to be more of a reflexive experiment. And when you keep that sort of thing in mind, and there's like the way the film is presented, which I love with the hand painted sets and just the way it would almost like break away from the film and it have these moments of like comedy and these outright meta thing. It felt like the movie was unabashedly trying to communicate that it was a movie. This has nothing to do with reality. This is a movie. Like this is a fictional world outside of our realm. And I kind of feel the same way about TV Glow, and I'm kind of getting into this realm where I almost feel like this plays in the same universe where this is the midnight realm of this film. Like this is its own like Miasma is its own little universe somewhere on the other side of a TV screen, and it's not necessarily about like a person physically going there. It's about this soul like coming to this place to go on this journey. And maybe the movie starts like right when the credits roll, and that's what you'd see in this world that you'd find in this videotape that just exists somewhere else outside of our own reality. And I think that's becoming a recurring motif in Schoenbrun's work, which is very fascinating to me. Just the use of screams to kind of communicate a different reality, a different time of the past. I think you get some of that criticism in here with just the way some of these movies are looked now out of context or without looking at a historical context, that it's almost like this existed, this was a time in a different reality in a place that no longer exists, but it existed here. Like what makes, because it's on this videotape, what makes it not real? And it's where you like the care like casting someone like Gillian Anderson to play this person from this era to like clash with this person that has this tendency of this era that but is like fighting against the modern tendencies and the politics of the film. I thought was brilliant the way they like set that up to really like kind of examine and get like to the meat of what this person was feeling underneath. So it really like plot wise, and that's not anything I really focused on that much in this movie. I kind of just vibed and like tried to take in everything I could, knowing I collect my thoughts later. Like there's some things that people brought up about symbolism that I haven't even begun to think about yet, but I've kind of just thought about this movie as a whole. You know, as a movie, I think about identity and where Venom brought it up well, where TV Glow was movie more of a movie about kind of like in retrospect, where this is a movie about moving forward. And they definitely like all three films definitely tie thematically. And it just the use of screams obviously is being the recurring motif as well, and that's definitely the most intriguing part of their filmography to me. It's almost like the reverse Michael Haneke, where he uses screams and real videos and news footage to try to make it like reality, where she uses screens to bring you to another place away from reality and blur the lines between what is the real reality. So yeah, I have a lot to say about this movie, but it's really hard to talk about that just out blatantly spoiling it and you're really getting into spoilers. I really also don't think just the plot of the events that actually happened in that movie are like that almost that important. It's almost just like what it all means together, how it makes you feel. Because I also think there's not really a wrong answer to when it comes to movies like this, and that's why I find these movies endlessly fascinating. Why I tend to like them and rewatch them over and over. You kind of just pick up more like you're staring at a painting, and over time, you know, you see certain textures because you've been looking at it for 10 years, and it starts to mean different things to you. So I guess with spoiler free, that's not really all I have to say right now. So I liked it quite a bit, so I will go ahead and pass that.
All right. Then on to our next guest, JP. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, man. So little backstory. I have not seen at the World's Fair or whatever. I saw the TV Glow and I really liked that movie. It made my top 10. It was like my number 4 last year. Was it last year?
That was
Or
the
the
year
year before?
before. Year
Year
before.
before. And one thing I'll say about that movie is the like after I watched it and did the reviews and did the top 10 and stuff, it's one that actually stuck with me and I think about from time to time. So I think I would like it even more. So when I saw that they were making a new movie and it was coming out, once I didn't I heard of this movie, but I didn't know it was them who directed it. So I was like, "Oh, shoot, I want to see this." What are they doing next? Because at the end of the day, what I found about I saw the TV Glow, what made me like it was that it was unique and different and interesting. And I think that filmmaker has a really unique vision to things. And I get excited whenever new filmmakers come around and they do something different or they're not painting the same picture over and over again. So right away, I was kind of just interested to see what they would do. Going then, me and Carly went and seen this movie last night, and when I'm watching it, I'm like, okay. First of all, I love that it sort of deconstructs the essentially Friday the 13th franchise, specifically, um, with just sort of how it's perceived to the world, with all the different. I love the opening like credits with how there's breakfast cereal and this, that, and the other, and just sort of how it is a wave of like pop culture, and it does a really good job of mirroring something we're familiar with and changing it to this Camp Miasma thing, and it's quite literally like the same box art fonts and stuff like that. So it was really neat to see that. And so at first I thought it was going to be like this sort of like meta like slasher thing, but it went into a completely different territory. And much like I saw the TV Glow, which I agree with Tyler and Venom, that it's sort of like a companion piece to that. I think that one of the things that this movie does, that being also straight Hispanic male. uh you know, it might not seem like something that I could that the people like us could connect to, because it is talking a lot about like queer and gender and different stuff like that. But I think one thing that connects me with it is that it seems to have this like heavy through line of stuff that we like stuff that we can relate to, stuff that, like the scene where they're sitting in front of a TV as a child watching their favorite slasher film. The stuff with the candy I thought was really interesting because it's just comforting to this person. And it's like just it's a safety net, you know what I mean? Getting a bunch of candy and curling up and watching a movie. I think we can all relate to that as fans of cinema and horror films specifically. So that is stuff I could relate to a ton. And then just the questions of identity and also being comfortable or not comfortable with that, and sort of walking through that pace. Stuff that I thought was interesting is what I think there's a lot to take from this movie that I fully don't know everything, but I feel like there's a lot to do with everything. Like every aspect of it, you can kind of dive in and take things away from it. I find that really interesting anytime a film is able to do that. Um, Stuff like the scene, you know, and I'll stay spoiler free, but just sort of when they're talking about actual scenes in the Camp Miasma movies, and that whole thing, how that plays out, I thought was really interesting. And there's certain things that, like, you ever just watch a movie and like see it completely see a scene completely differently than you did when you were younger? Like, I think we could all relate to that stuff as well. And I think they do a really nice job of like tying this all into this narrative. And then also the filmmaking stuff was really creative and fun as well. And I think like the taking the, you know, um the different shots and the different stylized, like almost like dream painting type of fantasy world backgrounds and stuff like that was really interesting. I think the actual like there's so much in here too, like because it's also sort of like playing on like the slasher itself and what we love about, like, it's taking the ridiculousness of these films and sort of like amplifying it because it's a fake movie in a movie, you know what I mean? So it's like taking these uh films and sort of making them more ridiculous just to showcase how ridiculous they were and stuff. And I really kind of love what they did with the air vent guy and Little Death, obviously. Le Petite Mort. I'm sure you guys caught that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things I noticed once it started getting into like the more sexual stuff, where it's like, oh, that's why it's called Little Death. But yeah, overall, man, I thought it was really interesting. I don't think I'm as high on it as these two, or as low as Dawn, but I do think that there's a lot to take away from it, and it could be a movie that I get higher on as time goes by because I think it's so interesting. And when me and Carly walked out of the theater, I was like, "What did you think?" We started talking about it, and then I'm like, at the end of the day, I just find this movie completely fascinating because it's so unique and different. And my audience actually clapped. Like, I think that my audience primarily was people familiar with this filmmaker's work. And if you ever actually look into this filmmaker a little bit and like hear their backstory, how they grew up and stuff, super relatable, a lot of stuff. I think that one thing that I read with I Saw the TV Glow that really made me appreciate that film more was that the director had said that they cared more about like fictional relationships than they did real relationships, and that's sort of like what that movie is. I saw the TV Glow, so it made me appreciate that movie more hearing that. And I could relate too if you ever got really into a show or something that you were very passionate about as like a teenager. It totally makes sense. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'll pass it back to Mike.
All right. So I'll start by saying, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I was a huge fan of I Saw a TV Glow as well. Uh, we all, what is it? We all went to the World's Fair or are going to the World's Fair. I did see that once, but I
Doesn't it
really
make
need,
you want to check it out again,
yeah,
like
I
Tyler
kind of
said?
want to go back and
Yeah.
see like what probably like details or little things to pick up that I didn't get out of it the first time.
I
Because
feel like it's gonna be like a really dialed down, kind of diet, more low budget version of this movie, like your rookie year, and like it'll be a lot more. Or I'm not this movie in particular, but just like go for body of work, where you might look at it now and be like, okay, I appreciate like the development that was here and like what this blueprint turned into.
yeah, yeah, and like to Don's kind of point that this movie wasn't for him. It's like I get it, and
Yeah, I
I
totally can
like
see
I
that.
would like I wouldn't want like every horror movie to be like this, but I am glad that there's room for this now in the multiplex because I actually didn't have to go to the art house theater. Like I thought I was gonna have to, but Regal ended up adding some screenings. So it's cool that this stuff can make it to like multiplexes and be a wide release. But I thought the movie looked good. I love the cinematography. I mean, I'm gonna repeat a lot of stuff that was already said, but I love that this director they take something that you can obviously tell the main crux of the characters, their story is something very personal to them and their experience growing up, but it's presented usually in a way that it can almost be like universally relatable in certain ways, even if you don't share like their specific characteristics. I love the fact that like their love for that era of horror and grown up. I did just check the age, 39 years old. So right about like in the mix of like all of our age groups. I mean, maybe not Venom's, sorry, Venom, but like between the rest of us, like kind of sandwiched in the middle of our
Dick.
age group. So,
Mhm.
so they kind of grew up in that era, yeah. And I love that you can love horror and grow up with it and get completely different things out of it and love it just as much for different reasons. And I think that love comes through in these movies. We these movies shaped us in different ways. We turned out how we did partially because of our love for these and things we discovered watching these movies, and I think that shines through in this movie. I think when it does come to like the slasher elements, the kills are craftfully done. I like the design, and it when you read up on the movie afterwards or look at analysis from different people, it makes sense why things were designed the way they are. I think Venom already nailed it by saying like nothing feels on accident. It's very deliberate in its presentation. I've heard this referred to as like the start of post meta in horror, where like I know Scream isn't technically the first meta film, but like it's credited, I guess, by like the masses as kind of like the birth of the big meta movement. And now, so maybe we're getting like what that means to be post meta in this genre at least. So that's kind of cool to fathom that maybe we're seeing like the next step of like what comes after what you say 2.5 decades of like everything trying to be like meta like a Scream movie, and now we have something that's going like beyond that, which is cool. It's cool to see like the next evolution. So I'll save like thoughts for spoiler because a lot of it's just going to be repeating what's already been said. But the other thing I would say about this is just like I saw the TV glow, I think this is one that will probably even get better with multiple watches revisiting it. I definitely going to revisit it before the end of the year for like considerations for list stuff, because I just think there's so much to unpack that you can feel like you have a good grip on it. When it sounds like we all do, at least for many elements of it, but there's just so much there. And going through and reading like some good reviews, like the ones that really get in and break it down. It's just it. I like that a movie like this can excite you to like see it again. Like it sticks with you, it stays in your head. It feels like something you have to revisit again because no matter what you got out of it from that first view, it's like I need to like go through that experience again to see what else is there for me. And also, like Venom said, shout out to Kids in the Hall appearance
Kevin
there because
McDonald.
yeah, and I had no idea. I didn't really look up other than I knew Gillian Anderson was in this, but I didn't go through the cast or anything. And when he showed up, I was like, oh, cool. That's another blast from the past. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that for now for general thoughts and just say, yeah, big endorsement from me. So Venom, I'll go back to you for anything before we go to our spoiler section.
I mean, it seems like we covered so much of the non-spoiler conversation that we really can. You know, we've talked about the cinematography, haven't really talked much about the score, which I absolutely did love. What's funny is that there's a couple of songs in here that I am familiar with, but I was never a fan of. Like, I've never been a fan of the Counting Crows. It's just not really my thing. But in the context of how it's utilized in this movie, and that's the long December scene, I just thought it was fucking brilliant. I absolutely loved. I mean, I had an ear to ear grin on my face that entire scene.
That's what to me, like, kind of the power of cinema. If you get a good needle drop, it can make you fans of like songs that you might not necessarily listen outside of it. Because like I remember in the 90s with, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of like new metal, like that specific genre of metal, but like for some reason in horror movies it just kind of like worked with the movies. Like I was like, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Well, I mean, when you hear new metal, it screams 90s. So, I mean, it's just like 80s music is good for setting the tone in an 80s movie. Yeah, new metal kind of does the same thing for 90s fare. And I'm okay with that. I'm not much of a fan of new metal at all. Same as Mike. Those bands those were the types of bands I made fun of in the 90s while I was listening to, you know, cattle decapitation and death and everything else. So um, but yeah, I mean, like I said, great score, beautiful cinematography. The dreamscapes, you know, the dreamscape style backgrounds that we get are gorgeous. I would love to find out who actually painted a lot of those, because they really, like, they're very obviously fake, but that's the point. They're not trying to trick us. It's not like a matte painting in like a 50s, 60s, 70s movie where they're trying to convince us that that's the actual sky. It's very obvious that is not the sky, you know, especially after uh a certain death at the end of the movie and certain characters wake up. It's so ethereal looking and just gorgeous that you know it's not real. And then it starts to give you, like what JP was talking about, and Tyler as well, like, is all of this happening? Is this entire movie just a dream? Is it a metaphor? Is it one person's mental health psychosis? I mean, ultimately there's a lot of different avenues that we can go down talking about the themes of this film. But and I forget who made the point, but yeah, there's whatever theory you have, you're right. Ultimately, like, there is no wrong way to look at this movie. I mean, even Don, like, you know, we all kind of, other than Don, have all kind of praised the film. And ultimately, I had a feeling that this wasn't going to be a movie for Don. You know, very metaphor driven, you know, lots of subtext throughout. Uh, and obviously very character driven and performance driven, which again is something that Don doesn't usually seek out. But I am glad that he still enjoyed the slasher elements of it. I mean, that first rampage in the cabin, I mean, chef's kiss. I fucking love that scene. It was so great. Not just the score, but just the way that the effects were done. And I mean, did you guys even notice how, as Little Death is walking up to the cabin, the kills were practical, and then as soon as they walk into the cabin, it's all CGI, almost giving us that kind of taste of modern cinema. God damn, this fucking movie was great. I'm sorry.
The one thing I was going to add in my general thoughts that I forgot was a lot of times with like meta films, or at least ones that are trying to inject some meta nature into them, you get like this kind of like dose or bit of like academia or academic approach. And I feel like this movie kind of turned that academic approach in on itself with a couple scenes and a couple things that were suggested that, I guess, to get too detailed would be spoiler territory. But I like how, because this has been a big debate in the horror community, I think, when it comes to like how much of that is in films when it doesn't need to be, or is it being overused? Is it too much of like a crutch sometimes? And I think like this movie kind of handles that well, and it almost says like in some situations you have to stop using like intellectualism as a shield or a protective shield against like confronting things. And you know, we can get more into that in spoilers, but I just was very impressed with how this movie unfolded and all the subtext.
Yeah, one of and another scene that none of us have actually talked about that I actually thought was brilliant amongst a series of brilliant scenes in this film was the Zoom call pitch meeting. Now, I'm out here in Hollywood. I used to work on sets. I've actually been on a couple of pitch meetings. Obviously, Zoom didn't exist in the 90s when I did the pitch meetings, but you know, a teleconference. And it's funny how pitch meetings don't seem to have changed much in the last 30 years because like the hierarchy of the characters, the producers, and then the studio head that were in that Zoom meeting is exactly what I had to deal with when my partner and I wrote a treatment back in the 90s that, you know, we were trying to pitch to an independent studio. You know, you've got the
that
one
exec was
oh
so good. Like the way they handled, like it was so funny because it just reminded you so much of like the bullshit that these filmmakers have to go through.
exactly.
I guarantee you that was a sort of you know, fantastical version of something that this filmmaker dealt with.
Oh, absolutely. I watched an
Probably.
interview with her actually right before we got on here. I watched a Collider interview with her, and yeah, she literally talks about the difficulty in, you know, getting funding for these movies. Even though this woman has put out well, maybe not objectively, subjectively, 3 brilliant films, she's still having trouble getting funding because studios don't understand her point. They don't understand what she's going for. And to an extent, I understand that because, you know, her movies aren't going to be billion-dollar movies, at least not in the trajectory that she's in now. But they are amazing films with so much subtext, so much to talk about when you're done that it makes them a perfect podcast fodder. I mean, I knew whether we loved or hated this movie that this was going to be a great conversation, and it's becoming that right in front of my eyes because I mean, there's just so much to talk about. But yeah, like I said, that Zoom call, I've been at a pitch meeting, I've got firsthand experience. And yeah, there's almost always that one person at the meeting that says nothing. If you remember during that Zoom call, there was that other transgender woman who literally just said one thing the whole Zoom meeting. That's very,
And their title was like,
queer assistant.
Queer
assistant. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
Their Zoom name was queer assistant. That was great.
I appreciate this Jane person for kind of poking fun at her or their world as well, which is pretty cool. It's cool to see that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I felt in a way she was trying to communicate that like I don't want like this identity to just be like, oh this is the trans filmmaker, where she kind of got into that with that whole like crash out that Hannah's character had, where she's like, well then they put this in this box so you can put this on this and then you can sanitize it, like they're taking the whole progressive line of thinking and like turning it out to show how unprogressive it actually is. So and like how it's actually worse than just put someone out. You're putting people in the box, and I think she's trying to communicate like I don't want to be put in the box. I'm a filmmaker, like first and foremost, and I don't want to like be viewed as like in this like intersectional box of this type of filmmaker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you read her backstory on that? That she put, from what I read, she put that whole maybe not the whole scene, but she made sure to emphasize it because I think it was either after first movie or TV Glow, they tried to get her to sign on to do like a Leprechaun reboot, and it was because they're like, well, if we get like a queer person to do it, it'll come off as like, oh, it's modern and with the kids of these days. And she felt like it was like a total, they didn't care, they just were like, well, we can pander, we can use it to pander. So it looks
they
like
wanted to make them a token.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're basically using a queer director as a shield, you know, there's no backlash for what they're about to make or what they've made in the past, assuming this is the same studio.
However, I'm not a big fan of passing on Leprechaun. I mean,
But I mean, that was the next thing I was going to say is I genuinely appreciated Chris's intelligence in this film. The fact that she was very aware of what the studio was doing, that they were using her as a shield so that they can go ahead and make money on this problematic franchise. But then if anybody throws any shit at them, it's just, well, hey, we hired a queer director. How can you, how can you say
Right.
we're transphobic?
Yeah,
So,
that's totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, yep, that's great.
Uh,
I didn't even kind of realize that because the Friday the 13th, the Camp Miasma films, because they're, homophobic and past, um, what's the word? Chauvinist and stuff,
misogynistic.
misogynist and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually didn't put that together. I don't know why I didn't, but thanks for pointing that out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember reading articles even back in the 80s talking about how the male killer using knives and pointed objects is basically a phallic symbol, I mean, they're
Yeah.
basically fucking these women with a knife. Yes, they're killing them, but at the same time, in their head, they're kind of fucking them.
And like at the same
I-
time, I felt like they really like satirized that like whole argument
Yes.
too, where they where like you can read into it and think there's all this deep like deep rooted hate against women, but like at the end of the day, dude, these are brainless like tits and ass blood movies. Like it's not that deep. Like it's literally just
Yeah.
entertainment, and like it's almost like they went so over the top to just like show like this is the stuff, this fucking comic book hokey like goofy shit is what you're trying to tell me, is what you're trying to tell us, influencing a generation to hate women. Get out of here.
Exactly. And that kind of leads to one of my favorite lines in the film, too, where Billy talks about, no, the original Camp Miasma is just about flesh and fluids. Now, on the surface, it makes it sound like, yeah, it's just a tits and ass horror movie where we get to watch a lot of good looking white girls get chopped up. Yes, on the surface, that is true, but flesh and fluids could also mean like internal happiness, internal acceptance. And I think that's the kind of the path that Billy's character was going down. Because don't forget, just like the original Camp Miasma was a sexual awakening for Chris, it was also a sexual awakening for Billy as a 24-year-old playing a 17-year-old in that movie. So just, my God, there are some just absolutely classic lines in this one that I will definitely be quoting for years to come.
Yeah,
But
we should probably just spoiler tag because like we're kind of
oh yeah,
writing the line now,
that's
which
literally
is
what I was
okay,
about to
but-
do. Yeah. So, folks, that's going to be your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma and our spoiler-free conversation piqued your interest, then go ahead and pause the podcast, go check out the movie, and then come back to get our more detailed thoughts. If you've already seen the movie or don't care to, then go ahead and stick around. So, I don't know that I even really want to do a walkthrough for this movie. I don't think we should. I think we should have a nice open discussion about some of the themes, some of our favorite scenes. And JP kind of already started us out talking about the opening credits. I fucking love this opening credit sequence. I mean, all of us here, and I'm looking at Tyler's background, so that obviously proves that all of us here are physical media collectors. We care about our physical media, just like Little Death did, basically living in an underwater video store, if you will. I'm sure more a prison of the mind than anything else, but we'll get deeper into that. But
One thing about that,
Mhm.
like the opening credits, and as well as just something that I relate to a bunch, the scene where she actually goes into the gas station or whatever, and is looking at the rack of movies and stuff, and there's Camp Miasma 6 or something there for $6.99 on DVD. It reminded me so much of when one year I work in hotels for anybody. I got snowed in at my work, and I decided to stay in a room, and I walked across the street through the snow to like a Dollar General or something, and was just like looking for something to snack on and do. And I'm going through the rack and of DVDs, and I find like Stephen King's Storm of the Century like on DVD for like $5, and I was like, I wonder if we have a DVD player at the hotel. So I go back to the hotel with this Storm of the Century, and I go through like the back like storage room, and I'm literally like same thing. I find it like on the bottom shelf, like covered in dust, and I like dust it off, and I go to my room with my snacks and the movie, and it was snowing. So, Storm of the Century, like it was perfect. And that scene just like was so like relevant to my actual like things that I do in my life and stuff like that. And this movie's filled with stuff like that. And even like the candy stuff I thought was so interesting.
Yeah.
Especially like at the end of the movie. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool scene because it's like real life. Like you go to a Dollar General or something and they have movies there, and it's like Camp Miasma 6. Like they don't got 1 or 2, they got 6 though. But it's like you're just looking for something of familiarity while you're maybe a little stressed because you're about to make this movie and meet this actor and stuff like that, and you just like sort of sink in, and it's like perfect because it's like research essentially.
Nice. Did anybody else think Jillian was going to turn out to be the killer? Like when she first got introduced in the makeshift cinema that she had there at the theater at the campsite.
Yeah, I think that's also intentional. Like they want you to think that,
Exactly.
So yeah,
no, I mean they definitely set it up that way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I thought that was definitely a possible line that it was going to lead to. But as the movie progressed, I kind of just thought this isn't really that type of movie.
Exactly. Yep. So obviously we've got Chris, an independent director who made an independent film a couple of years ago that found some success. So now she's got the potential to direct this remake of Camp Miasma, a franchise that had like 8 or 9 different sequels, plus a reboot that apparently sucked ass based on some of the newspaper clippings that we saw. I just something about Chris, like I loved her introduction here. The fact that she's polyamorous, which is definitely something I've never met anybody who's polyamorous. So it was just kind of interesting to see the way that she looks at relationships. The fact that she's okay with her partner having another
reluctant,
partner.
but
well, I think that's kind of what plays into something. I guess I'll introduce this theory later. But
well, I mean, it weighs into the whole. It weighs into the sexual identity of the whole thing, and Chris specifically, am I gay, am I straight, am I poly, am I bi, whatever metaphor or title that you want to go with.
It almost feels like she's just doing the current thing, and she has like this hint of reluctance because she knows this is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that kind of mirrors what happened with Billy, during the events of the first film. It's the same thing. She's having sex because she thinks she's supposed to.
It's like putting on an act in life.
Thank you. Yeah, she's putting on that mask, just like our main character in TV Glow and our main character in World's Fair. They put on that mask of what they think society wants to see, and of course, it doesn't make them happy. It makes them, irritable, confused, scared, everything else. And something about the way that Chris comes off at the beginning just made me. I mean, Chris is probably now my favorite character of these 3 films. I mean, I shudder to call this a trilogy. I mean, I think you can call it a spiritual trilogy, since, like I mentioned earlier, there's that kind of progress throughout the 3 of dysmorphia, finding out who you are, and then acceptance.
You can call the Dollars movies a trilogy. You can call this a trilogy.
yeah. Hey, I'll do it.
I actually love the Chris character. I think that that's probably my favorite thing about the movie. They feel so real. And just, I thought that the actress was just amazing in the role.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the casting of our 2 main characters I thought was great. The casting of Sarah Sherman as Chris's agent was, I don't know, that felt kind of tacked on, but I also understand that you kind of want someone who instantly makes you smile or laugh. I mean, obviously, most of us would know Sarah Sherman from Saturday Night Live. You see her in, if you are a fan of hers, you instantly smile. So obviously the squash scene was interesting for somebody like me. The fact that she's so she pretends to be interested in what Chris is going through, but really all she cares about are the dollar signs. She just wants Chris to finish the deal, get Billy to sign on for the movie, and then get the studio to, green light the whole thing. It felt very realistic. Again, I live out here in Hollywood, so yeah, it definitely, I've met many, many people like that who kind of pretend to care, but they only care about the money. Where can we go from there? Obviously, once she gets to the camp, she meets Billy. Not that she even knew she was going to the camp. She just thought that she was going to meet, Billy, Gillian Anderson's character, to, have kind of a meeting to get her to be in this next movie. And then she arrives and she's actually at the real life camp Miasma, or the camp, I think, Tovel, something like that was the name of the camp that, was the cinematic setting for Camp Miasma. So instantly, you start to think, why the hell would this woman who starred in the original movie decide to live here? Like, what mental health issue is she dealing with that she never left this site? Like, what is so special about it? And obviously, as the movie goes along, we realize why this setting is special to both Billy and then eventually Chris by the time we get to the end of the film. So as we've talked about, this is definitely a film about sexual identity, dysphoria, confusion. I don't want to say sexual burgeoning, because this girl's 29 years old and she's already had sex, multiple times, I'm sure. So not really sexual burgeoning, but sexual
more like
clarity.
awakening.
Yes, awakening, clarity, yeah. Exactly. And that's really one of the strengths of this movie is, that kind of subtext about Chris and Billy. And man, walking out of this film, I started to think, like, okay, there are like 8 or 9 different Miasma movies. Does that mean that Gillian Anderson has helped 8 or 9 different women with their sexual confusion over the years? Because she's never left the camp. She's always been there. She's always there to welcome Little Death when he comes back from his quote unquote hiatus. So, how intentional is this from Billy's standpoint? Was this her intention? How would she even know that Chris is a sexually confused girl before, they ever even spoke? Because from what I understand, they never even spoke. They kind of just made they made the appointment for the meeting through their agents and producers and everything else. So this is literally the first time they're meeting, speaking. So, it kind of throws that in there too, which might lead to Tyler's theory of maybe nothing here is actually real, that this whole thing is just either a fever dream or that something else entirely different is going on, but it's an unreliable narrator situation. Who knows? So again, up to the interpretation of the viewer. But obviously,
I kind of got that a little bit from like Billy's perspective, because with the killer, I guess you would call it a mask. Yeah, it is a mask or a head pullover thing. With it being like an air vent, like I was thinking, like, because her backstory about her during the filming, when you're laying on the bed and you kind of look up and you see like an air vent. So like I thought it was like almost her materializing that in her head to kind of like support the theory of like this is almost like nightmare fuel or like dreamscape kind of logic going on here with the whole situation up at the camp, because Billy has kind of isolated herself and kind of like created her own fortress and not rejoin regular society. So there's a lot of deep rooted issues going on with that character as well to explore in the movie that it's hard to unpack it all after our first time watch. Even like some of the stuff you're bringing up, I'm like, oh, it's making me be like, oh yeah, because it's been 3 or 4 days since I've seen it, and it just makes me want to watch it again now.
Exactly. Let's talk about Little Death a little bit. Obviously, our killer of our series of films. We end up getting a little bit of a backstory from Jack. Has some similarities to Jason Voorhees' backstory, but without all the sexuality stuff. So as
I would say it's like
out,
Jason and Angela combined.
Thank you. Yes, that's perfect. I love that. Absolutely.
Even like the face is very reminiscent of Angela's face at the
Yeah.
end of
Oh,
Sleepaway
it
Camp.
definitely is. I thought they were making
yeah.
a callback to it, the way they kept posing with like her, with the way
Yeah.
her jaw was. I thought that again too. Like they were, because I guess there's some discourse that like Sleepaway Camp is not the most unproblematic movie in today's age. So I almost also feel they went so over the top with that element in Little Death that we're like, this is the movie. This movie is the one that you guys were all upset about. This dumb movie from 40 years ago that has this goofy ending.
Exactly.
I feel it.
Definitely. I could see Little Death being a representation of Felicia Rose, absolutely, or Felicia Rose's character in the original Sleepaway Camp.
And it's just
But
such
yeah,
it's like a fondness for the character by introducing him that way too.
absolutely. Oh, definitely. I mean, there's nothing but love in this film, I feel like, you know. Obviously there's, you know, confusion and you know, themes of identity and loss of identity and things like that. But I mean, I feel the love throughout this entire film. And I think that kind of goes along all three. Yes, you know, the TV glow dealt with, you know, a character's confusion about their own sexuality and their place in this world. But again, I felt the love. Like they're in all three movies. I feel nothing but love. Go ahead.
I felt this movie, Chris, at the end of it, she kind of got her acceptance and maybe positive outlook going forward, whereas the main character in TV Glow, it to me it was the two reads are either ambiguous on where that character goes from there, or like negative, as in they kind of understand the awakening, but they're still planning to like suppress it because of the life they created, despite
Yeah.
kind of being given the tools to see the truth. But they decided like it was either too scary to confront it fully, so they kind of like pushed it back down. Where in this one, it's this character gets kind of, I don't know if it's redemption so much as the acceptance of the awakening. So from here on out, it will be like a experience in life going forward.
Yeah, I think that it's the blissful freedom. Like we get that at the end of the film when they're walking around covered in blood, where you know the blood could be anything, covered in tattoos or pink hair or whatever, walking around just shopping for candy in total freedom of like the outside judgment and just sort of their newfound comfort with who they are and what they like. You know,
Exactly. I mean,
that's probably one of my
looking at
favorite
Chris,
scenes as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Chris, I mean, she doesn't even care that she's still in her panties and a skimpy t-shirt. You know, she's got that confidence. I mean, she basically becomes Billy by the end of the film, and you know that is like the very definition of a happy ending, in my opinion. I also I like seeing the kids in the winter setting and the summer setting too.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, these kids just hang out at this gas station and play.
I think the obvious metaphor for the winter is like the winter is like the building to this climax, and then when it's the summer, it's the spring. It is
the winter of her discontent. So
yes.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll go with that metaphor, definitely.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Little Death. Again, we find out that he was a camper at Camp Miasma many years ago. But he also had that sense of sexual confusion. Now his actually has a background reason, because his parents basically raised him to be a boy one day and a girl the next, which, I mean, you do that to a child, duh. I mean, look what happened to, Felicia Rose, Felicia Rose's character.
Look what happened to Glenn and Glenda at Seed of Chucky.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. So, I mean, obviously, when you have parents like that, you're probably doomed, sadly. And Little Death, but I do like how Little Death is a tragic character to start, but then by halfway through the movie, you realize that Little Death is actually a positive character. Little Death is a representation of desire. of what you want to be. Little Death doesn't care about anyone's opinion of him. I mean, look at the fact that he wears a plastic see-through costume. Like, you know, we've talked about the mask, but the fact that he wears a plastic see-through costume, he's very okay showing the world that he has breasts and a penis. Like, no problem whatsoever. That is the ultimate sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Just like the acceptance of
liberation
the
in a way.
Thank you. I'll go with that too. Yeah. So, I mean, just that design choice alone for Little Death, I just thought was brilliant. Obviously, the spear being the misogynistic tool of the serial killer from 80s slashers. And then the mask, like Mike said, you know, being that air vent up in the ceiling. But I also kind of noticed the way that they were utilizing the darkness of the hole at the center of the vent almost reminded me of like sexual organs, a vagina and anus, and how some people, especially like Chris and Billy back in the 80s, almost fear that, you know, whole that aspect of sex. I mean, we see Chris and Billy start to kind of get it on at one point, and then just as Chris is about to reach climax, she stops everything because she doesn't know, you know, she can't get out of her own head. I think she says that exact line in the film. And it just speaks so much to her character and, you know, the confusion that she's had to deal with, the fact that she can't seem to be comfortable with anyone sexually, male, female, it all, you know, it doesn't matter. And that definitely kind of points to a more serious underlying issue. So were you going to say something, Mike? I'm sorry.
Well, it was we were talking about something like a minute ago, but I was just going to bring up like the kind of philosophical nuance between like Billy and Chris when, you know, Chris is talking about, or her like intellectual interpretation of like 80s slasher movies, or at least the Miasma movies, and Billy was kind of confronting her, like saying it's just a mask or a shell to like hide your own fear and desire that like you got from these movies. And then as the movie goes on and Chris kind of opens up to her more, partially because of the weed, you know, they smoke some weed together and minds start to open, inhibitions drop. And I mean, and she talks about her fantasy about like wanting to be I don't know if she specifically said final girl, but like one of the victims, like running, like just in her underwear. Yeah. And like she had to kind of like break her exterior shell and what she was hiding behind to just kind of like share like what her actual desires were. And she probably had that dysfunction like in her whole life up to that point where she could never either describe it or she just wasn't comfortable sharing that with anyone else.
She was afraid of it.
Afraid of it too. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's why Little Death is a scary looking character. Little Death represents, I mean, one of the many things that Little Death represents, at least in my eyes, is sexual desire. And how many people, especially young people in their teens and 20s, are literally scared of their own desire. Like, you know, I've literally met men who were virgins well into their 20s, late 20s, because of just that fear of, you know, looking bad in bed, or, you know, not doing what is expected of them as a man in bed, things like that. And does that mean that these people are sexually confused? Possibly. I never really got that deep into the conversations with them, but I mean, it definitely exists. It definitely comes from reality. And obviously, you know, with our director being a transgender woman, it kind of just speaks to her journey. You know, I mean, she's basically Chris in this movie, or maybe she's Billy, who knows? But obviously this entire trilogy has been basically her journey of, you know, acceptance of who she is, what she is, and also acceptance of the world's opinion of her, because that's another big part of acceptance, is yes, being accepting of yourself, but then also being accepting of the fact that society is going to look down on you, that society is going to look at you as not normal, you're a freak, you're not, you know, you're not a cis white hetero person, so, you know, there's obviously something wrong with you. So I mean, it just leads to more of the subtext of this film that I absolutely love. So anyway, back to Little Death. At one point, Little Death is drowned by a bunch of bullies at the camp, blah, blah, blah. The crime is covered up, and that, of course, starts Little Death's, journey of revenge, where he, she, it, they
Didn't
come
they
back.
say like they had to drown him? There's something.
Yeah, they
like
had
that.
to drown
I
him.
had
Like
to
that.
drown.
I
Interesting.
was like, dude. They had
But
to.
you got to figure too, if the events of the first Camp Miasma occurred in the 80s, that means that Little Death was probably killed, what, in the 60s, maybe 70s? And it was probably even less acceptable for, someone to, I guess back in the 70s, they called them transvestites, men who dress like women, but it was probably even less acceptable then. So the line almost makes sense from a twisted bully, frame of mind, but obviously to us people who actually care about other human beings, it comes completely out of left field. Oh yeah, we had to drown him. Okay, I'll go with that. So anyway, our movie goes from there. I'm not going to go over every single scene, scene by scene, but we get some, great we actually see Chris watching scenes from Miasma Part 6, the one that she got at the convenience store with Kevin McDonald working. And then, of course, there's the scene where her and Billy sit down and watch Miasma, the original Camp Miasma. And it's so... It would almost be like me with Friday the 13th. Like, I've seen Friday the 13th umpteen times. It's ridiculous the amount of times I've watched it. For me to actually sit down and watch it with someone who was in the movie and see something that I've never seen before in the film would almost be a religious experience for somebody like me. And I kind of felt that for Chris when Chris was quiet, like after the power went out and Chris is just sitting there quietly kind of absorbing what she just watched and what she saw for the first time after dozens of watches of this movie, definitely spoke to me, because it's something that potentially could happen to any of us. I mean, JP talked about it earlier, the wisdom of age. You watch a movie that we loved in the 80s, and my example of that is Revenge of the Nerds. I loved Revenge of the Nerds in the 80s. I can't watch it now. I fucking hate it now. I mean, that's a discussion for another podcast. I'm not going to get into that diatribe right now, but 100% accurate what JP said earlier. The wisdom of age changes the way that we look at things. And I think that was also happening to Chris throughout most of this movie. She's getting older. She's seeing a different worldview that Billy is introducing her to. And it's kind of almost forcing her hand to be more accepting of who she truly is, whether she's straight, gay, poly, whatever the case may be. So, all right. So as our movie continues, we eventually do see them watching Camp Miasma, the original, and Little Death's rampage in that cabin is potentially one of my favorite scenes of the year. I said that earlier. Just the way that they utilize that Counting Crows song, because that song, Long December, it's not a scary song, it's an uplifting song. And when you think about it, the fact that Little Death is going in there and killing all of those horny teenagers, it's that uplifting of Little Death accepting who they are specifically, and going around killing all these horny teenagers. And then you got this beautiful uplifting song playing behind it. It just kind of changes the context of the scene in a beautiful way. So again, kudos to Jane for that scene. Just an amazing little scene. So eventually, let's go ahead and skip forward a little bit. Eventually, Billy tells the story of her first orgasm, which occurred during the quote unquote filming of Camp Miasma, because I think that's kind of a big reveal at the end of this movie, what Camp Miasma actually is. Is it a film series, being filmed by a big movie studio and released, or is it something a little bit more supernatural? We'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah. Hearing the story of Billy's first orgasm and her kind of accepting the fact that fear and arousal are two sides of the same coin, at least for certain people. I thought it was beautiful. And you can kind of see how Chris's eyes were opening to that fact that, hey, maybe she's onto something here. Maybe it is fear that's going to get me to finally accept who I actually am. And I think that's what we actually get. Like someone mentioned earlier, how she talks about one of her biggest thrills would be running away from little death in her in her panties, you know, with her breasts bouncing. I mean, I think she literally says that, with my breasts bouncing up and down, running around from little death. It just comes off as very arousal inducing. So eventually, like I said, we do see Little Death, played by Jack Haven, who of course we know from the TV Glow. And we see that he's living in, or they are living in, what is basically a makeshift video store from the 80s, but the only movies on the shelf are Camp Miasma movies. And as it turns out, Little Death isn't the star of these movies. He is actually creating these films. That's why I said, you know, studio production in quotes earlier, because as we find out, there is no studio involved with the making of these movies. These are films that are being created by Little Death and just kind of being put out there in the universe. And obviously, as horror fans, we accept them as, you know, a production was done in a studio and these are just actors who are still alive. But I think that's kind of what they're going for here, that's not really the case. All the people that die in Camp Miasma movies are gone. They're not coming back, or at least I thought that until I got to the very end of the film, which, you know, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But ultimately, we get this great climax where Little Death does come back out, and I also like kind of how he gets his mask. Basically, he goes through a ceiling vent to leave his little, you know, paranormal video store to go through the lake and back to the real world. So it's almost like only his head fit through the vent and not the rest of his body. So he just kind of takes the vent with him when he comes up to the surface. It's an effective mask, ultimately. I mean, even the sound of Little Death stalking someone, and you can hear like the louvers on the vent moving, like it's unnerving at times. Like I could definitely see how that would bother people, horror audiences at least. So yeah. He comes out, or they come out from the lake, and who do they decide to kill? Not Chris and Billy, or at least not right away, but it's all of the side characters. So basically everybody that we've already seen in the movie. Chris's partner's partner, Thor, who I thought was a very underrated character as well. I don't think anybody's mentioned Thor yet. I thought he was great. The producers, Chris's agent. There's a big metaphor there, and at least what I grabbed from it is that's Little Death basically freeing Chris from all the stresses of her life, killing her agent, killing the producers, killing her partner and her partner's partner. It's taking all of the stresses out of her life, and she's now able to see clearly. She's now able to accept who she is without the peanut gallery in her ear telling her what they want her to do. Oh no, you need to make this movie this way because that's what the audience wants. I mean, who cares what the filmmaker wants? It's what the studio wants and what they think the audience wants. And again, another aspect of the film that I absolutely loved. But yeah, basically Little Death comes back, and we haven't even mentioned the arterial spray in this movie. My friends, about a month ago, Mike and I reviewed one of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies on Cinema Beef, and those movies have spectacular arterial spray. This movie, holy shit, I'm not exaggerating when I say geysers of blood, a literal geyser of blood coming out of people's, necks when they get decapitated. There's one scene where Little Death in Miasma Part 6 kills a couple, and when he's slashing at the guy, it's a fucking volcano of blood that comes up. And I love that because it's just showing the over-the-top silliness of the Camp Miasma movies in the world of the movie that we're watching. So the over-the-top nature of it didn't turn me off at all. In fact, I loved it. It actually added to the film because it made me, it's almost like it was comforting to know, okay, we're not actually in the real movie. We're watching one of the movies in this fake world. And there's a certain comfort to seeing all that gore, all that blood, you know, especially for gore hounds like me, and probably for Don too. So again, you know, beautiful use of the over the top arterial spray. And then finally we get to our one of our final scenes where it is Billy and Chris in bed. They are having sex, and Billy is basically telling Chris, now look at yourself through Little Death's eyes, the way that I did over 30 years ago. And Chris does exactly that. And of course, that fear turns into arousal, which then turns into Chris's first orgasm, which we get to gloriously watch on screen. And I love the fact that when Chris orgasms, the look in her eye is the exact same look that Billy had in the original Camp Miasma, that look that enthralled Chris as an 8-year-old watching the movie. She doesn't really know why that look spoke to her so much, but now she legitimately does. So like I said, Little Death ends up killing both of them. At this point, Little Death has killed everyone at the camp, and they decide to just basically unceremoniously walk back into the lake and wait for their next opportunity when they get hungry, quote unquote, as they say it in the movie, which is just more fuel for my theory that Little Death is a representation of our sexual desire. We get hungry when, you know, any heterosexual person will tell you, you go long enough without sex, you start to yearn it, you know, badly. And that kind of leads me to, you know, my theories on what Little Death represents. Now, obviously, after Billy and Chris are killed and Little Death goes back to the lake, a lot of us are going to assume the movie is over, but no. Billy and Chris both wake up the next morning in bed, covered in blood, and both of them with shit-eating grins on their faces, because I think they, you know, Chris obviously realizes now who she is, and she's accepted who she is. And of course, Billy is happy because she was able to help someone do what no one helped her do back in the 80s. Don't forget, Billy had to do this stuff all by herself. Chris at least had Billy to kind of guide her through this whole thing, which just makes Billy that much more of a sympathetic character. And, you know, even in her 60s, Gillian Anderson is not a hard person to look at. And yes, I'm gonna get misogynistic in my movie that rails against misogyny, but yeah, sorry. Anyway, the point is they end up waking up, and this is where we get one of those great matte shots, the artwork behind them making the scene look very dreamlike. It almost looks like the afterlife. Like for half a second, I thought they were legit dead, and this is them in heaven, because it looked ethereal. It looked beautiful, you know, this beautiful meadow with wildflowers growing everywhere. But obviously then they end up going back to the gas station where Chris was earlier, and where we see in the film too, in the original Camp Miasma, where the harbinger, or the crazy Ralph of that movie, basically tells the kids that they're all doomed. They go back to the service station completely covered in blood. Chris is half naked, and they're just sitting there talking about gummies, which something about that conversation just I absolutely love. The fact that and there's multiple times in the movie where Billy shows her age in the film, like when she doesn't know what the word poly means during the the KFC scene. By the way, another thing that none of us have mentioned, so much product placement in this movie. Holy shit. And I can't imagine any of these companies paid Jane to have their names in here. So, I mean, every conceivable type of candy is represented in this movie. I mean, fucking Abba Zabbas are even in here, which is, definitely a deep cut for candy lovers.
I saw one of those for the first time in real life. I thought they were just from the movie, Half Baked. I didn't know it was a real candy. It was like this year. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. I didn't know these were real.
Oh, I ate them when I was a kid. It's definitely kind of an old man candy now, but whatever. I'll accept it.
Yeah. The product placement.
She is right though, dude. The gummy, like I'm a gummy fan. Like I don't eat a lot of candy, but I love gummy stuff, like gummy bears, gummy worms. Like the modern age for gummy candy has like totally like blew the top off, because it's so many.
I love that. I love that line.
We were talking about that the other day about gummy candy.
I love Chris's line about this is the golden age of gummy candy.
Yeah,
it is.
It's really true.
Oh, by the way, did anybody notice the candy wrapper chandelier? I thought that was
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
great.
I noticed
Oh,
like
that
there's
was
just a
awesome.
lot of little things that like popped up throughout the movie covered in candy.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about with
Yeah.
some of the symbolism and iconography in the film, and the metaphorical kind of aspects of those symbols. Just again, chef's kiss with this film. I'm praising this movie so much. You'd think it's my number one, but it's solidly in my top five. We'll see at the end of the year where it lands.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, then there's the gas station scene or the service station scene where they go back and they buy their candy and then they just walk off into the sunset and everybody's happy. And I love this ending. I genuinely love this ending. I feel like it's the perfect ending for this spiritual trilogy. As I mentioned earlier, how each of these movies kind of represent a different path, a different part of the journey of accepting who you are. And
They are
I mean,
calling it the Screen trilogy, by the way. I don't know if you guys
the
said
what?
that or not.
Oh,
Screen
the
trilogy?
Screen.
trilogy.
Screen. Yeah, okay. I'll go
Yeah.
with
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Why
that
not?
makes sense.
That's what
Yeah,
the director's
absolutely.
calling it.
I like it. So yeah, and there you go, folks. That's pretty much the end of our film. We do get a post-credit scene with Kevin McDonald and who was the other guy? Patrick Fisher. Basically two characters that were both killed in the first Camp Miasma movie, but their characters keep resurrecting every time Little Death comes back because obviously Patrick Fischler has to be the harbinger. He's got to be the one to tell the kids that they're doomed because what's a slasher without a harbinger? So there you go. But yeah, I mean, again, we could probably talk about this movie for at least another 2 hours. It is just so well made, so well acted, so well edited, so well scored. I mean, as I've said, it's a 2 hour movie that felt like it flew by for me. Obviously, Don probably had a different experience than the rest of us did, but for me, it flew by. And it just, I cannot wait to see what this director does. I genuinely hope that bigger studios start to understand her brilliance. I mean, because ultimately, this movie, if you're the kind of person that likes to take your movies at face value, this movie and all three of these movies are probably confusing as shit to somebody like you who only takes their movies at face value. So these are definitely thinkers movies, movies that need to be discussed afterwards. And again, I'm for the third time, I'm quoting Tyler that, yeah, there is no wrong opinion for these movies. I mean, if you love them, that's correct. If you hate them, that's also correct. If you think they're about sex, if you think they're about, spiritual identity, sexual identity, whatever the case may be, you're right. And that's the brilliance of these films. So, like I said, I could talk forever, so I'm just going to go ahead and shut up and say back to you, Mike, to tie a ribbon on this one for us.
I got some interesting things I'd like to introduce about this movie.
Please.
Yeah.
So, just to expand on what I said earlier about how I think this is just a completely different realm. Like this is like a world that exists in this video tape, exists on another side of the screen. And even like a sequel, like sometimes you go to different places in the sequel, and sometimes you go back to places. And maybe this is like Chris going back to Billy's realm all these years later, and that's why Billy is still there and Billy is aged and has never left. But this isn't the same snapshot of time that other people have gone to when they've gone to Miasma. So I just to establish, I think this is a completely just a realm outside of reality, and it's almost like it could even to me it's like the Black Room in Twin Peaks. To follow the Lynchian influence,
Yes.
I think even putting Patrick Fischler in here is a big nod to almost a key of this movie. He's basically playing the horror version of his character in Mulholland Drive.
Oh, right.
So I think it's more of like a Black Lodge thing, and then the real name for it, whatever, was Camp Something. Maybe people just enter it and it's Camp Something, but some people are called to this world or allowed to enter where miasma actually exists, like in the same way where like only certain people can enter the Black Lodge that are like called there. So I thought that was an interesting, and maybe even the first calling of her was this amazing shot they have of her when she's a little kid watching this movie, like catch the first time she sees that look in her eye. Like maybe it took her 20 years to get here, but that was the first time like the calling to this place really began. So really getting there. I think Billy and Chris are actually two halves of the same person. Uh, I think Chris is more the modern person that exists like in in her real reality, and she's fighting against. She's put her inner self is pushing against all of these things that like are deemed like problematic or fight what like that push against what she really desires, and that's why you have this character that's like untouched by time. That's almost like her fantasy in the same way like David Lynch kind of played with these ideas with movies like Mulholland Drive itself, with Blue Velvet. He does this. He does in Lost Highway too, where it's a projection. It's this other person's inner desires playing out in this dream. I think
Lost
it's
Highway for sure. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the same type of thing examined here, just in a different way. Like they're just looking at it in a different way than like Blue Velvet like associates like child trauma with like what she's experiencing in this movie. Uh, like I don't think it's any mistake. Like this actor, this person is someone who isn't an active actor, a recluse, and it's the smoking hot 60-year-old. It's almost like it's almost telling you like this is like her fantasy that like she has this connection. And was something that JP said almost really supported this. That I it kind of like put a light bulb in my head earlier, where these fictional relationships are more important than real relationships. So maybe she's had all this like these years where she's like had a crush on this girl in this movie, or like had this desire for her, and like this is her coming to this place where this person still exists 60 years later, and it's her own manifestation of her own fantasy. But really, what brought this theory, or I mean, really like kind of started to circle me in on why I think this is. I've been calling this James Schoenbrun's persona, referring to Ingmar Bergman's persona, which is a movie about two halves of a woman in this almost this metaphysical realm whose personalities begin to meld, and it's one half of this star living this life, and then the guilt she left behind on the other side. And there's this really important scene in there where one of them is talking about this like this sexual fantasies orgy that they had on the beach that they had like a lot of shame about. It was like a deep dark secret, and I almost looked at that, and it's a scene about like freeing yourself literally, like having a sexual relation, and then I almost felt like that same scene where when Billy is talking about her experience on that first set, and she has her own like taking back of the agency when she refuses to be the victim in this scenario and becomes the killer. I felt like it was the mirror to that, and it was really like a nod to that movie, and it got to that point, and it got to this conflict where like they finally like came together, and she had to see she said, like they melded together. So I think that's really what's going on here. And that's why you have these characters that exist in this realm that never leave. Maybe it's a place you can't leave. I mean, like you just exist there forever. Maybe it's a place that you're allowed to walk from. Maybe some people are not allowed to leave from it. It's just, but I think it's just a world that exists somewhere on another side of the TV. And I don't necessarily want to say this is like someone's like psychotic break or what. I don't know what to describe as. I don't know if this is like a realm that someone's called to. If this is just so I don't know what to describe it as, but I don't want to simplify it to like this person's crazy and they're the same person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean it like that. I think that's why I don't think there's really a way to follow this movie as if there's any sort of like real plot line. I think that's just this world within this painting where things happen, you take away from things, and it's all jumbled up, and ultimately it means however these things appear to you. And that's basically what I got. And that's really kind of what I got out of TV Glow too for my own purposes. And yeah, I like that quite a bit. So I'm definitely excited to watch this again. And once a lot of these thoughts have collected, I've heard what more people have to say about it, and you see these things you're familiar with, and maybe with some you build upon that simulation, which either be confirmation bias from me, or maybe I'll see something differently.
I fuck with it. I like the theory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, you said it yourself. You're not wrong either way, no matter what you think. And,
yeah, I think there's crumbs there to
that
support it.
film.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, Mike. So I guess back to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to cut off anyone that has anything else to say, but have we pretty much shared what we got to say about the movie? And it's all been a one-time watch so far. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally just left the theater a couple of hours ago, so this is all
wow.
still really fresh in my head. this will definitely a purchase. I mean, once this hits physical media, it'll be the first Jane Schoenbrun film that I buy. But this is an absolute purchase for me. Or maybe they'll put out the trilogy. I'll just buy the whole trilogy. There you go.
Did
Because I
you?
did love We're Going to the World's Fair. Like I remember being higher than almost anybody that I spoke to about it. Just
Yeah.
the visual aesthetics of that film were just so beautiful. Even if you didn't understand what you were looking at, just the visual presentation was just so great that it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I feel like
Um,
I really owe that movie a rewatch.
I need to watch it after watching these two. I definitely want to go back to that. Me and Carly are doing this thing now that she moved in, where we're gonna get like a jar, and we're gonna put movies throughout like the year that we want to see that aren't like for podcasts or anything, just like casually. And that was the first one I put in there. And then like once the summer hits next year for when we do take 22 shots break, we'll just pick a random, you know, paper out of there and open it and watch the movie. So that's going in that jar.
Nice. Hey, you could save a tree and do that digitally with like a almost like a Wheel of Fortune type wheel. Like I know
It's
you
funny you mentioned that, Venom,
Yeah.
because I'm actually using paper that has like reports on it that at my job that I'm just repurposing the backside of the paper.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, at least no more trees are dying. That's good.
um, did you guys hear? I mean, I guess we can just wrap it up on this little tidbit, not related to the movie, but the director. Did you hear she showed some interest in possibly handling a Nightmare on Elm Street remake when
A
interviewed?
Ah,
transgender Freddy.
Don't do it. Just do something you want to do.
that is
I mean,
something she wants
honestly,
to do.
yeah.
She,
I'd rather see
if you
original
read
stuff.
her like bio and stuff, one of her most significant moments was binge watching the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Oh,
I mean,
would.
hey, I'm not against it as long as it's not David Gordon Green. I'm happy.
I mean, I would feel better about it with the fact that like it's something she would actively like pursue versus like the scenario playing out from the movie where like the studio's like, oh, let's just grab her because she's the hot thing right now. I
I
mean,
just like I almost don't want her remaking or doing any sequels to anything.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
No,
exactly.
well,
you
I mean,
see, but you could do both, Tyler. You could have that aha, like I made it moment in Hollywood with your passion project that is
I
like a
don't even want
studio
to
film.
burn. I don't even want to burn a Jane movie on that. Like that's my thing. I don't even want to burn one movie on that. Like just
I do get Tyler's perspective though because sometimes with younger or I'll say newer directors in the genre, it's like they come out with a couple movies that they wrote and direct and basically handled the creative control, and then like by their third or fourth movie, they're handing that off, and it's like,
Yeah, but we're seeing a change in Hollywood system right now where we're giving these young or, new filmmakers like more creative control and opportunity, and it's working. So I think that I personally would love to see it. I also would like to see them continue making their own stuff as well. But I've always been in the camp where you can do both.
absolutely. It's just, not everybody can be Mike Flanagan. So,
That's true.
all right. Well, I guess that's gonna wrap it up for our thoughts on the movie in this episode, but we'll find out what else everyone has new for people to listen to. I assume with JP and Tyler, you guys are on the same show, so I don't know if you want one of you guys to handle that duty, but go ahead and let everyone know where they can hear you. And since you're back, like what's the latest?
Yeah. So we're not officially back yet. We still have a couple more weeks. We just did a like prelude to our backness
yeah,
with the It's Alive franchise show,
like
which
the
we just
preseason.
released. Yeah, it's like a preseason. And then next week, we're doing the Killer Kids episode. Those have been following along. We started with genital horror, and then we moved to pregnancy horror, and then we moved to baby horror, and now we're in Killer Kids. So that's our own quadrilogy of shows there. Also, we have the Sin Bin. That's a monthly show. We're doing an episode here in a couple weeks, and then when we come back fully, we're releasing our top 10 of 2004, which will be a traditional big show with us three as well as Carly, our homie Mikey Fish, and I believe Tony is also on that show. So the Shiner Hartman will be there, and then we'll be full force back after that show where we have our whole like we have everything planned out. We have an amazing Italian horror month this year that we're looking for guests for as well. We haven't announced what we're doing yet, but it's a
Yo,
big Italian horror month.
yo.
No, Dawn's awake.
He spoke.
I actually
maybe
miss
we'll have you
I
back
miss
on,
my
Dawn.
days talking Italian horror with the guys. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
come on,
come back.
JP. I'm the one that actually puts out a Google document detailing where every service these films are on, just so I know where Italian Horror Month is.
You know
I've
what?
been-
We'll try to have you back. All three of you guys. We're having we're having 5 episodes this year, so that we have space.
Cool. Tyler, I know you're on the same shows, but is there anything you wanted to add to any of that? Or does that cover it pretty much? Or
I think that pretty much covers it.
okay, cool. All right. Venom, I think you got a new Creature Comforts that's coming down,
Yes,
right?
No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 53 is now available as you listen to this episode. And it's pretty interesting that JP brings up the It's Alive franchise because the movie that we looked at was 1974's It's Alive, which was my pick. One that I had seen at the drive-in as a kid in the late 70s. I want to say it was like 76 or 77. I tell a lot of stories on Creature Comforts about my parents going to the drive-in but not being able to get a babysitter, so of course my dumbass has to sit in the back seat while they watch all these great horror movies. But obviously it gave me a great education on 70s horror. So like I said, episode 53, we take a look at It's Alive. And then I had a guest spot on the Joe Blow Horror Show, which I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, where I got to talk about one of my favorite films from 2019, and that is The Perfection. I am a lifelong musician, and that movie spoke to me in ways that movies just don't speak to me. So another good time there. And I'll let Mike talk about the latest episode of the main show. So that's pretty much it for me.
All right. Before we get to me, Dawn, you have anything to add?
Creature Comforts should be coming soon. I think we settled on the movie for the next episode. Should be coming up within the next couple of weeks. Just want to make sure that everybody's gotten enough time to watch it. And hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to be doing another roundtable that I've been doing every so often. This one is going to be a fun one. We're going to be doing a bracket on full moon films. So, yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun with that one. We don't dive too deeply into Puppet Master, but we do hit a couple of those. Let's see, Hideous, Head in the Family, couple Trancers films. I don't remember which of the Prehysteria films, but one of those is on there for sure. And then I think most of it is actually like the early 2000s stuff. So it's basically like a tournament style round robin thing. Like you pit 2 movies against each other, the winner stays on, kind of a deal. So if you've been following those, I've done a couple of them with some friends of mine. We're finalizing plans to get that one recorded, so that should be out sooner rather than later. But that's pretty much it for me until I can pester JP into that Italian horror thing from a few months ago.
Yep.
All right. So to add to that, we did recently record episode 76 of the main show, which is like the ever elusive show that we probably worked on rescheduling it like for 2 months at least. And that's Below from 2002 and Devil's Rock. Was it 2011 that I think? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So those were Derek's picks and that should be up in the next day or two. And then the only other thing I got was the latest Cinema Beef podcast where we we had the weirdest pairing of like summertime movies, White Man Can't Jump, and the beach volleyball movie Side Out that I got to torture Jeffrey X. Martin, forcing him to watch and discuss that one. One of those dumb movies that just happened to come on all the time on HBO when I was a kid. Watched it a ton of times. So that was pretty fun. And that's it for new stuff. This week in the theater, we are going to have one of them's Buddy, that weird movie that could be a lot of fun. And what's the other one? We were just talking about earlier today. I can't remember what the other one was.
It wasn't Insidious, right?
Well, because
Colony.
Colony,
I think.
yeah, Colony.
Yeah.
That's
I was going to say, because we kind of screwed up and we, instead of going Insidious, Miasma, Colony, we're switching it up and we're doing Miasma and Colony.
yeah.
I'll be watching the new Insidious in a couple of days, and I'll chime back in and see if it's worth doing an extra episode potentially, just because there's so much horror coming out right now. If it's even watchable, I might try to talk my co-hosts into doing an extra episode, but we'll see. I mean, considering how much I hated the last Insidious, I'm not expecting great things.
cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, we got plenty to choose from. Coming out of the summer, we got plenty of horror in the theater still, so that's good. But yeah, JP, thanks for coming back. Tyler, thanks for coming for your first time, your debut on the show. As always, it's like pretty much an open invite. It's a weekly show, and if it's a horror movie in the theater, it's more likely we're going to cover it because most weeks you're going to have like one release. So it's like it's pretty straightforward what we're going to do. If there's no releases, we just find something new on VOD. But welcome back anytime, guys.
You got it.
Cool.
Appreciate the invite, guys.
Yep.
Anytime.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, that's going to wrap up this episode of Fresh Cuts. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you in a week's time with the next one. Let's say bye to listeners.
Later.
Webster's Dictionary defines miasma as a pervasive, oppressive, or demoralizing negative feeling surrounding a place or situation, such as a miasma of despair. So, pretty good choice of title there, Miss Schoenbrun. Take care.
Peace.
Ooh.